Have you ever had one of those moments where you feel like you're finally at peace? Like, after years of chaos and noise, you find a little patch of silence you can finally call your own? That was me. Standing on my dock with a cold beer in one hand and barbecue tongs in the other, chicken sizzling on the grill, jazz drifting from a little speaker by my feet. It was the kind of quiet that lets your shoulders drop a few inches and your breath slow down for the first time in forever. And then came the sirens. No joke. Police sirens. Wailing across the lake like I just fired off a cannon, not lit a barbecue. All because of one woman. Well, one very particular kind of woman named Margie Caldwell. She wasn't just the president of our local HOA. She was the self-declared sheriff, judge, jury, and, apparently, emergency services dispatcher for the entire neighborhood. Let me back up a bit. My name's Nate Collins. I'm 37, a custom furniture maker by trade, and after too many years living above nightclubs and next to midnight trumpet players in the city, I finally scraped together enough to buy myself a little fixer-upper on the edge of a lake in a place called Windmere Hollow. Not a fancy lake house, just something modest with a creaky dock. Big trees, and no traffic noise for miles. It felt like I'd bought a piece of my childhood back, the kind of silence I hadn't heard since camping trips with my dad before he passed. I'd been there all of 3 weeks when the whole mess started. That night, I'd just finished sanding a tricky walnut cabinet and decided to treat myself. I fired up my portable grill, laid out some lemon pepper chicken, cracked a beer, and leaned on the railing watching the sun melt into the water. I didn't even hear the golf cart until it was crunching gravel right behind me like a snake slithering across my piece. Then I heard her voice. "Excuse me," she snapped. Already halfway off the cart and marching toward me in khakis and a blindingly white polo, clipboard flapping in hand. "What exactly do you think you're doing out here?" I turned slowly, real calm, because I already had a feeling what was coming. "Grilling dinner," I said, holding up my spatula. Pretty wild, I know. Her lips tightened into a line sharp enough to cut drywall. "You are in direct violation of HOA fire regulations," she said, pointing like she was casting a spell. "Open flames on dock structures are prohibited. This is a serious fire hazard." I gestured to the concrete slab under my feet and the fire extinguisher I'd placed beside the grill like I always do. "This is private property," I said evenly. "And this is a portable grill. Fire safe. Code compliant. You're welcome to double-check the serial number." She didn't blink, just narrowed her eyes and whispered, like some cartoon villain, "You have no idea what kind of rules I can play by." Then she dialed 911. Dead serious. She called the cops on me for grilling on my own dock, on my own land, with a permitted grill and a fire extinguisher 2 feet away. And when the officer showed up, confused, a little embarrassed, he basically told me, off record, that his hands were tied. HOA complaint. He had to document it. The next morning, taped to my front door like some kind of legal eviction, was a violation notice. $250 fine. Cease all flame-based activity immediately. Now listen, I didn't move out here to start fights. But something about the smug look on her face when she handed that off to the officer, something about that made me realize I wasn't dealing with a concerned citizen. I was dealing with someone addicted to control. The kind of person who didn't just enjoy power, she fed off it. So I decided to push back. But I wasn't going to yell or post angry rants or go door to door stirring the pot. I was going to outwork her. That weekend, I pulled out every document I'd received when I bought the house. Survey maps, title history, HOA rules. I read every word, even the boring boilerplate written in 8-point font. And then I noticed something weird. The dock fire regulation that Margie cited? It was buried in an amendment dated 2 days after I'd closed on the house. Backdated. And not a single copy had been mailed to me. That was red flag number 1. Red flag number 2 came the following Thursday, when my dock lights went dark. I went outside to check, thinking maybe a breaker had tripped. Nope. Somebody had cut the power line. Snipped it clean like wire cutters had done the job. And that wire? It dangled right over the water like some silent threat. I didn't call the police. I called an electrician, then the power company. "No service calls to your address for the past 6 months, they told me. At that point, I knew Margie wasn't just enforcing fake rules, she was playing dirty. That night, I couldn't sleep. I spread my survey map out on the dining table, pulled out a ruler, and traced every inch of my property line. And as I measured and cross-referenced and double-checked every pin and coordinate, something huge clicked into place. The entire front entrance to the community, the gate, the little guard hut, even part of the road, was on my land. Not HOA land. Not shared land. Mine. That's when everything changed. I drafted a formal request for an emergency board meeting. No details, just property dispute requires clarification. I didn't want to give Margie time to circle the wagons. In the meantime, I gathered everything. Certified copies of the original survey from county records, GPS overlays. Even aerial imagery showing construction of the gate years after the original plat was filed. I built a case tighter than a dovetail joint. But then came the wild card Bob. HOA treasurer. Quiet guy. Lived down the lane. Asked me to meet him at a diner one evening. Said he had something I needed to see. Turns out, Bob had gone through 5 years' worth of HOA financials. And you know what he found? Margie had used HOA dues to pay for maintenance and upgrades, security lights, landscaping, even snow removal on my land. Without approval. Without any recorded easement. Oh, Bob said, sipping his coffee, and she also authorized a $2,500 gate remodel last month. Called it emergency maintenance. That was on your property too. So now, not only was Margie trespassing, she was spending everyone's money to do it. But the final nail? That came from a neighbor named Justine. Young woman, 2 doors down. Left a note in my mailbox one night with a USB stick inside. On it, a video. Grainy, handheld, but crystal clear. It showed Margie moving Justine's trash cans out of their correct spot, then snapping photos of the violation and later issuing her a fine. And the audio? Let's see how smart this little troublemaker thinks she is. My hands shook as I watched. Twice. 3 times. That was the moment I stopped preparing for a property dispute and started preparing for justice. At the emergency HOA meeting, the room was packed. People leaning against walls. Sitting on window ledges. Margie perched at the front table like she was still in charge. But the air had shifted. People knew something was coming. They just didn't know what. I stepped up, plugged in my laptop, and projected the survey map onto the wall. This, I said, is what 1961 says I own. Gasps. Whispers. People pointing. I showed the gate, the guardhouse. The mailbox cluster, all of it squarely inside my legal boundaries. I showed the deeds, the financial documents. Then I played the video of Margie staging the trash violation. That room went dead silent. When the clip ended, I held up the official letter I drafted with help from a lawyer friend. Margie Caldwell, you and this HOA have 7 days to vacate my land. Remove all unauthorized structures. Cease all activity, or I will file suit. She stood, tried to speak, couldn't. And then someone from the back said, you don't speak for us anymore. The vote happened right there. No confidence. Margie was out. 3 days later, I stood at my window and watched a crew dismantle the gate. That same afternoon, a new sign went up. Private property, no HOA access. That night, I grilled again. Neighbors came by, some with pie, some just to say sorry. Justine sat on the dock with me, feet dangling over the water, and said, you didn't just win. You reminded people that silence isn't peace when it's forced. She was right. And maybe that's the lesson here. Sometimes, bullies wear khakis and carry clipboards. Sometimes, they hide behind community to justify control. And sometimes, the only way to stop them is to know your rights, stand your ground, and out-document the hell out of them. Now I want to hear from you. Have you ever had to deal with an HOA nightmare? Or maybe a neighbor on a power trip who pushed too far? Drop your story in the comments. Let's talk about what happens when authority goes unchecked and what it really takes to push back. Because sometimes, the only thing standing between tyranny and a good barbecue is someone who knows where their property line ends and where the nonsense begins.